Don't have the ability to say much before this one, because with the power out and other stuff I'm dealing with, I'm strapped for time this go around, so let's just hope I can get this out without needing to delay it. You know, it's been 3 videos and an entire week since I had a figure on screen. That must not be allowed to stand. So today we are talking about the MMC Senator Ratbat. That's Ratbat back when he was a normal Cybertronian in IDW before he was mutilated and turned into one of Soundwave's cassettes. And boy, this is going to be a refreshing one, because for the first time in a while, I truly just get to be negative. It's been too long. Because this figure right here just doesn't work. And the mediocrity starts with the robot mode. MMC is one of the few companies out there that does retools of their figures. And I'm not talking about like with the Seekers or Optimus Prime where it's basically the exact same design with maybe a different head and different paint. No, MMC tends to design a lot of their figures with multiple characters in mind, so they leave themselves backdoors and engineering tricks that lets them change out who they're making. This approach is probably one of the biggest negatives about the whole company, because it's very hit and miss. Case in point, this mold. This is based off Drift, and as far as I've ever been able to tell, their Drift is not regarded as one of their better figures, and I can tell why. This is so gangly and kibbly with really skinny limbs and massive shoulder pads. His chest is puffy. I think these are supposed to look like sheaths because they're based off the Drift mold, but they are just huge chunks of kibble here. And he's got this awful dog tail hanging off the back end. You can either leave it like this, straighten it out and have it hang miles down off his ass, or roll it up like this onto his back where it doesn't peg in at all. Can I just point out that this is a very pointy figure and you can pretty rapidly hurt your hands by grabbing this guy. So much of the bullshit hanging off this guy looks so bad, but the crap on his legs is especially egregious. I can't even say that this is really hitting any of the right notes. Not even the necklace is correct. It's not even close. Admittedly, we didn't see much of the character's design in the comics, and basically always only from the waist up, but what we did see was so far off of this. He didn't have the shoulder turbines, he wasn't squared in the limbs but very rounded instead, his arms weren't black, his chest was much smaller, and he had something that looked like a set of washboard robo abs, and he was entirely less kibbly. This just isn't a good match for the character's body. But even more depressing is the head, because a few more passes and this might have worked out, but this is just off. It's close, but there are subtle and not so subtle details that are wrong. For instance, these are made to look like vents in his head, but in the comics they were more like struts that were attaching panels to the side of his skull. But the biggest bummer of all is that face. It's supposed to be creepy, sunken, and dark, but this is just none of that. He honestly looks silly. His face isn't set deep enough and his visor isn't long enough, so there's not a shadow cast on his face. And this might be the one time where I'm begging for light piping. And you know me, I hate light piping, but I'm begging for anything because his eyes are so dead. They are supposed to be these glowing coals burning in the sunken pits deep within his head, and yet the paint they used pops less than the dull gold they utilized on the rest of his accent pieces. It's barely different than the matte white color they used for his face. It's such a shame because this character is just a face. We pretty much only ever got images of his head, so this is the one part they needed to get right and they just didn't. All else could be as bad as it is and the figure would still be worth it so long as this one aspect was what it needed to be, and it's not. For accessories, he has 2 claws that you have to fight to get off his wings. The funny thing about them is that you have to put them on the opposite hands than the wings that they come off of as to not have them look goofy. These weren't something he was known for having in the comics though, so I'll tell you why he has them later. He also has these wing swords that just want to fall off, so I guess at least some of the kibble is removable. Poseability on this guy is its one strong suit. Head has more than average range, shoulders go up a fair amount, though it's not as far as you would want on any other figure, but this is Senator Ratbat. He is not exactly supposed to be pulling that many dynamic battle poses. He also has a strong amount of forwards butterfly, and I think using that in concert with the bicep cuts gives him a more regal look. Elbows bend more than a 90 but are stopped by the shoulder pads. Wrists rotate and have the barest amount of tilt with opening and closing fists, plus a trigger finger. Legs kick forward and backwards just fine, but if you want to get them out to the side, there is a lot of crap that's in the way that you need to move before you can even touch that joint. Knees pull more than a 90, but these chunks of kibble really get in the way and stops them from being able to go much further. And these might be the most articulated feet I've ever seen. Toe down, different toe down, toe up, toe rotate, whole foot rotate, ankle rocker, and heel tilt. Just damn, this guy has mobile feet. The joints on these feet are really strong too. So long as you take some time with them, they will serve him well in trying to stand. So yeah, poseability on this guy is pretty well above average, though not insane. Transformation isn't terrible, but it's not particularly clever. Getting stuff into place can be something of a chore because it locks in a bit too securely. And a lot of it feels like, really? This is what you want? And the result is this odd angular beast. Not beast as in animal mode, like beast as in weird large object. So this is interesting. It's not necessarily accurate at all because we never do see Ratbat's vehicle mode in IDW, but it does feel like something he would have used. So, as I already told you, this is based on the Drift. But you might notice that this isn't like a car or anything like he's supposed to be, because interestingly enough, this is not just based on their Drift. This is actually based on their weird Batman cross-Transformers borderline bootleg figure that was based on the Drift. Kind of like Batbot Changer. It's a very weird thing, but it's supposed to look like a Cybertronian batplane, and I guess that does make too much sense for Ratbat. But there are some problems here. The wings are very loose and want to flop about, but they also want to pop off as well. And you might think that's obvious because the two are the same part, but the funny thing is they aren't. How the loose wings attached to the ship are entirely independent from the loose joints they are rotating on. Another problem I find with this mode is that it's too circular. Like, it's just not long enough. I know the Batplane is never a consistent shape, but it tends to be sleeker than this. I find that this looks better with the wings moved back to where they're supposed to be in robot mode. This thing does kind of have an opening cockpit, though it doesn't look good internally, and it's not like anything can fit in it, so the figure would have probably been served better if this had been left out, considering that this just hangs out the figure's back in the worst way possible when in robot mode. And these here look like windows already. I think as part of the Batman reference for the other version of this mold, even though Batman isn't exactly known for having Wolverine claws, its landing gear are what forms the robot claws. So, the fact that it's supposed to rest on these does massively increase the likelihood of scuffing the hell out of them. So, this is working out better than the robot mode. But I think the robot mode is kind of the all-important piece of this equation. This is a bummer to say, but I think the BotCon figure was a better representation of this character than the Mastermind Creations one. This is a representation of a specific character in a specific moment, and it's just not served well by being stapled onto this other silly Batman mold. And even if that weren't the case, I don't think this mold shines all that well. Yes, it poses fine, and yes, the alt mode is fine, but the robot mode is just so choked with kibble. The massive shoulder pads are a joke, and the robot underneath all that is scrawny looking and fails to leave any kind of strong impression. Plus, handling this thing kind of hurts your hands. And I forgot about this, but I had to glue this piece right here on because it just had no hold out of the box. Honestly, this time I get to have the refreshing task of saying, just don't buy this. It's not bad, but it's not good enough to want, and that's me saying that. I am a huge fan of this company. I will argue that MMC are the single best third-party company on the market, but this figure just shows that even gods like them are actually mortal men. And you'd think I'd be more disappointed by that, but I'm not. Not every figure can be a winner, and it only really bothers me when I feel like the company took me and my patronage for granted. But that's not what this feels like. It just feels like a figure that didn't pan out. Like an honest but flawed idea that reached its full potential, but its full potential was not a lot. This doesn't suck, but it's not fun, it's not good by modern standards, and you shouldn't bother getting this unless you need a Senator Ratbat in your life, and if you do, then you are a rare breed. Everyone else, save your money and find something that you'll actually enjoy. This is the most mellow, give it a pass I will probably ever give. And that's not half of what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please, share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.